All right, another episode of the Scoring Compass podcast. I'm not in Chicago or Glasgow anymore. I'm back in my kitchen. But at least I get to head down and virtually visit Kentucky with worshipful brother Brian Evans. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, I came across, or the reason I set up this interview, really, it's three words: commit or demit, which was the title of a presentation I learned through the culture through the Kentucky Lodge of Research.
Mm-hmm.
And just that title alone, struck me. And it's a presentation that you're making. I'm not sure if you made it in the past, but I know you're making it in the future. And I want to start with that before anything else. How did you come up with that title? What is that presentation about?
Well, great question. The presentation is really probably about as clear as the title, which I would hope would be fairly clear. We when I discovered Masonry back in 2014, and went through the degrees, and then started to travel. Frankly, it wasn't what I was expecting, and I was disappointed. And then there have been some brothers that I've met along the way that have given me hope and inspiration. And from there, it just kind of made sense to me that, in my mind, if you want to be a Freemason, then you either need to commit and do it right and commit to it with your heart, or you need to demit and frankly move on to something else. And I don't mean that to be rude, arrogant, condescending in any way whatsoever. I just want our brothers who are serious about this to take it seriously, because it's a very serious organization and it should be taken seriously, in my opinion.
Do you think that Freemasons or Freemasonry as an organization, or even at the individual level of the individual Mason or the lodge, from that level on up to the Grand Lodge level, is there or have you received pushback or concern about the message? Because it seems that in Freemasonry, we're often kind of afraid to ask our members to commit to the craft. I mean, we'll always hear family work, deity come first, that type of thing. Like, it seems like there can be a pushback when you actually ask the membership to make sacrifices for the craft or for the lodge or for their brothers or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think from a literal sense is where you're mentioning that. No, let me back up. I have not received any pushback with that message. In fact, quite the contrary. It's been welcomed and happily received by most brothers that I've spoken with, and have not felt any animosity towards that. And what I mean by committing, I mean, of course, we all have lives and families and jobs and spouses and children's and hobbies that we can and should spend our time on. However, if you're not able to make a commitment to attend lodge regularly, to participate in lodge discussions, to help be welcoming to candidates, to help be welcoming to visiting brothers, to help set up and or take down lodge furniture without being asked, show up on time, dress professionally, act professionally. I think it comes down to a lot of the little things in my mind. And I think a lot of brothers join for the sake of joining something that in their mind is an important organization, and it is, but it's just gotten lazy. It's gotten lazy and very casual. And that's not all lodges. And it just needs to be taken a little bit more seriously in that regard.
Why do you think, because I agree with you 100%, but what do you think are some of the causes or the reasons that Freemasonry or Freemasons have become lazy when it's lazy towards the craft, towards the lodges?
Well, my immediate response is coming from a response as a parent. I have 2 children, just went back to school yesterday. And my immediate response is leadership. If brothers aren't receiving and seeing other brothers leading by example, then of course they're not going to know how they should act or approach the seriousness and solemnity of this organization. So my first would be, we need to point a finger at ourselves if we're in a leadership role of any kind and set an example to our younger brothers.
In terms of a leadership role or being a leader within the craft, how would you define being a leader within Freemasonry?
Well, anybody can be a leader. You don't have to be in a leadership role. Being a leader is, I would say, first and foremost, doing the right things without having to be asked to do something. Having a level of tolerance as well, patience. And again, I'm going to go back to the little things. Show up on time, well-dressed, well-rehearsed, ready to practice Freemasonry, knowing your roles, knowing your ritual, looking the part, acting the part, not from a very sincere level, and show interest and care in your brothers. Freemasonry, more than anything, is a brotherhood, but it's about education. It's about learning from each other. It's about helping each other. I just think that it's tailed a bit. And unless we get back on the right track, I think Freemasonry is going to have some problems.
So the title of your presentation, Commit or Demit, it still does place a level of, like, the ultimate responsibility for either committing or demitting is on the individual Mason. One thing that I've been pushing for lodges to consider, which it does exist in other locations, other Masonic jurisdictions outside of North America. The one thing I've been pushing is for the lodge to start basically enforcing commitment by requiring attendance, setting, the level of attendance requirements 3 times a year, whatever it might be. How much responsibility do you think a lodge has, leadership has, to actually consider enforcing attendance, enforcing commitment on the part of the brothers? Or do you think it should remain a personal choice as it is now in most, and I think in all North American jurisdictions?
I think it's a really good topic, and it's a good good topic for discussion nonetheless. My response would be, I would prefer it's not a requirement. So let me say that shouldn't be seen as hypocritical based on the message of my presentation. Quite the contrary, actually. Brothers should want to commit, not have to commit. And that's a very, very big difference. If they don't want to be there, then they're going to express that by not showing up. If they have to be there, then that can create resentment, I think, and probably could even be worse. But this is a conversation, and what we're having here is a slightly uncomfortable conversation because it's an uncomfortable topic. But I think part of being a good Mason and a leader on some level is to be able and willing to engage in conversations honestly, professionally, politely, and listen to the other side and be willing to let your mind be changed or hear a different perspective nonetheless to at least better understand it. I don't think anyone should be forced to attend. And if they don't, be reprimanded. Yeah, I want to be a part of a fraternity where people want to be there. And I think if anyone watching or listening attends Lodge regularly, then they'll see a consistent pattern of regular attendees. And those regular attendees are the ones in my mind that are those that are attempting to commit to this on some form or fashion, more so than others. And it's the brothers that are on in our membership roster, if you will, that don't show up, that we have no idea who they are. And I think it's our responsibility to try to understand who they are as well, and maybe reach out to them. But at some point, they have to want to be a part of the organization still. Does that make sense?
It does, and this is a good conversation, as you're saying. Like, this is one of those conversations that needs to be had. What what does it mean to you? This probably sounds like a stupid question, but I don't think it is. I think there's something there we need to explore. But what does it mean to you when you say Mason needs to want to attend? What does it mean to want to attend Lodge?
Well, all right, let's look at it at a different perspective. So I come from athletic background. I played sports in college, baseball in college. Imagine if I was forced to come and play my position. How good do you think I would play it? As opposed to if I wanted to get out there every day and practice to get better at my position. So I think it's very simple. If you want to be in this fraternity, then you need to want to participate. You need to want to pick up a book and read it every now and then. You should want to help with committee meetings. You should want to help make sure that your lodge is improving, not deteriorating. You should want to help be an example. You should want to help further advancement and improvement. If you have to do those things, I think it's just not, the quality is not going to be as good. It might be a Band-Aid on some level, but I don't think they should be forced. I see that side of it, but I don't think it should be something that is forced on brothers. I don't.
But again, going back to the question, I mean, I'm always hesitant when because this is something I hear often, right? I'm sure you've heard it often as well. I'm always hesitant about the idea of, or I guess it's a semantics argument to a certain extent. The idea that a brother we need to create a lodge experience that a brother wants to attend, in the sense that, like, I don't, the lodge can be and it should be a fun, enjoyable experience and all that type of thing. But I view lodge more equivalent to, for example, like, it's not about me, if that makes any sense. It's not about what I want to do, right? Freemasonry can and does make the world a better place. And if I'm a part of it, I have a responsibility to be a part of it, because doing so improves the world. Like, we'll use a degree, for example, right? A lot of there's tends to be this attitude amongst Masons, and myself included. When I was a worshipful master, I had this attitude, which is we should try to spread the work out in a degree as much as possible, so everybody has something to do, so everybody has a reason to be there. And then so they'll want to come out. And I realized, later on, it's like, well, hold on. Let's say, you've seen 300, 400, 500 degrees, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't want to come out and see 501 degrees because it'll be boring. I've already seen 500. It's like, yes, but it's not about you. It's about that candidate. That might be the 501st degree you've seen. It's that candidate's first degree. And whether you want to be there or not is irrelevant. You should be there because at the end of the night, you can shake that. He was a man, now he's your brother. You can shake his hand and congratulate him on being there. So just because it's not about wanting to be there. It's about recognizing it's important and choosing to attend, even if you don't want to be there. Because I'll admit, I get bored during degrees. I try not to, but I've seen so many. I don't always want to go, but I choose to go because it's not important to me. It's important to the brother who's getting the degree.
Are there ever degrees that you have attended by choice because you thought the degree work would be different or better than other degree work?
I mean, sure. I primarily go not due to the degree work. I go for the candidate. I mean, I would say that is primarily when I'm traveling. So, like, I live in Windsor, Ontario, which is right across the border from the States, right across from Detroit. And,
Mhm.
especially pre-COVID, there's a long, proud tradition of Masons traveling between Windsor and Detroit. And one of the real selling points and selling features for that trip was you get to see an American first degree, American second degree, American third degree. You get to see, and that's always wonderful because it's such a unique and different ritual to what we have in Ontario. But in terms of, degrees within my district, um, I'm primarily going for the candidate. Sometimes I'll go to show support for the worshipful master if he's a new worshipful master and I want him to see a well attended lodge. But I'm not
Mhm.
going because I want to go. I'm going because it's important to go.
Well, I think thank you for being honest. I think that's great. um, I would prefer to go to a degree that I know that it's been taken seriously, and that those who are conducting the degree work and offering a conferral have prepared and practiced and are going to do their absolute best job. That the brothers on the sidelines are going to be respectful of that, and it's going to be a solemn, private, professional event. Um, we've probably all been to degrees or heard stories of degrees where it's the opposite of that, and it's casual. I mean, and you've got people speaking and talking on the sidelines and not paying attention and falling asleep and other things like that. That's not a fraternity or degree work that I would like to be a part of or watch, just because that's just a different attitude that I have towards this. And I think being respectful is great, and we should. But also, I would like to say that, in my opinion, that the degree work and the rituals is just the beginning. It should be the beginning of wanting to be a part of the lodge. It doesn't end there, it starts there. So if the lodge and all they're doing is offering degrees and you're watching the 501st degree and you're getting bored because you've seen 500 previous, then there's something missing in that lodge environment. um, and what's probably missing is good old fashioned education, uh, communication within lodges, within brothers, to discuss topics, to engage in debate, in conversation. It's not just about ritual.
No, I like a degree is just an example. It could be a business meeting, it could be anything, right? It's
Sure.
the idea that what happens within a Masonic lodge is important. And it's not only important for that Masonic lodge, it makes the world a better place. And because of that, whether a individual Mason wants to attend lodge or not is irrelevant. He should attend lodge because it's important, because it improves the world, and I think to the extent that we are Masons, I mean, and this is true for anything, like sports teams, right? You could use that as an example, right? Whether you want to be on a sports team or not, if you're on that team, you should attend. Because if you don't, everybody else has to work harder and you've made their lives more difficult. And it's the same thing with Freemasonry, right? If you're part of a lodge, you're part of the team and you have a responsibility to be there, whether you want to or not, because it's not about the Mason. It's about the way that the lodge makes the world a better place. And even I always point this out to people, just like attendance is participation. Showing up is a way to show respect for the worshipful master. It's a way to show respect for the officers. It's a way to show that you care about the lodge, right? And I just sometimes think the idea of saying, you know, um, it, you know, it's important that members want to attend a lodge, but I think it's more important that they recognize it's important to attend a lodge. That even if they don't want to be there, them being there is helping that lodge and helping the world become a better place.
100%. I don't disagree at all. I agree with you 100%. I think it should be both. They should know they need to be there because it's important, and they should want to be there to participate in that process. And you've said that a few times. So my hope is maybe this is more of a back and forth conversation than you just asking me questions. So you've said to make the world a better place, half a dozen times or more since we've been on this. How are we making the world a better place by attending lodge? And I'm not saying we're not. I have my own opinions to everything you've said with your questions and your comments. So I'm just curious, when you say that, what does that mean and how is that being accomplished?
So the at the base level, the start of it is it's a matter of quorum. So I'm not sure what the quorum rules are in Kentucky. I believe it's 7. In Ontario, it's 7. So in order to, for example, get any type of work done, and that could include charitable endeavors, that could include, lodges have sent aid and funding, for example, to Ukraine. They've sent money to brothers in distress, especially during COVID when they lost their work or whatever it might have been. You need at least 7 members in that lodge. Now, I have heard people argue we should go to a model where the master, the secretary and treasurer do all the administrative work and just report back to the lodge. But I don't think that's a healthy way to run a lodge. I think business and when possible, bills and charitable work and things should be discussed in a lodge. You need at least 7 to do that. Otherwise, you can engage in those activities. Then there's the broader aspect of the brotherhood and of the fellowship. The more people that are under a lodge roof, and every Mason knows this, right? You have different faiths, different religions, different ethnicities, different ages, different occupations, different life experiences. When we're able to come together and work together with all these different backgrounds, that doesn't just stay in a lodge room, in my opinion. That expands outwards because it's setting a precedent, it's setting a model that we can apply, right? And how many people, especially nowadays, right? We always talk about this, but I think we always talk about it because it's so true. We're so divided amongst all these different fault lines. How many organizations still exist that actually welcome people from as many different backgrounds that we have? And then there's, the lodge is, and people will say there's internet, there's email, there's all those things exist and are wonderful, like this, virtual. But the lodge is still the best place to prepare for and create events. Like, for example, we had a brother when I was worshipful master who, oh my gosh, he turned, if I recall correctly, I was there, he turned 100 years old. And he was in a nursing home. Obviously, he wasn't able to attend lodge meetings. But we went out and presented him with, certificate and a pin. His family was there. That made a big deal to that brother. That made his world a better place. But that gets organized in the lodge. That gets organized by, people who's showing up. So those are some of the ways I think Freemasonry, I think just attending in and of itself makes the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't disagree with anything you said. In fact, I agree with probably all of it. And I want to offer this from a different perspective because Freemasonry was not created to be a charitable organization. Freemasonry was created to be a brotherhood, a fraternity of education to teach and learn from each other to be better people that then goes out into the world and a ripple effect is created. Charity is just one tiny minuscule part of that, and charity isn't always about money. It's about going and visiting your brother who might be ill. It's about offering, being charitable with your time, with your energy, with your skills. So there's lots of ways to be charitable. But I think if we want to continue to make the world a better place, then we better step it up. So in my mind, my position here is I want Freemasonry to take it seriously. I want the brothers who want to be a part of Freemasonry to take it seriously and treat it with more respect and more dignity and more professionalism than it is and has been done in many places. And if we do that, then I think we can make the world a better place. If not, we're just no different than another club or organization that gathers to discuss bills and minutes and everything else. And that's my opinion.
And I agree 100%. And that's why I so loved the, commit or demit as a title. I thought, and it's rare you hear people talking about the fraternity in that way. And I thought it was a refreshing and beautiful thing.
Why is that? Why do you think that is? Why is that so?
I can give you my
opinion. And I'm curious because I think we're probably similar in our thinking. So I'm curious to why you think that is. I think it should be at the forefront of what is talked about, but it's not.
Well, I think there's two reasons, and I suspect you'll disagree with the first, but I think we may agree on the second. So I think the first is we don't enforce. We're not willing to enforce standards beyond. And I should be careful. In North America, we don't enforce standards. And when I'm speaking of standards, I'm speaking of enforcing specifically participation or attendance. Right? We enforce dues. You have,
Sure.
Pay your dues or suspended, but we don't enforce any type of participation, which I think either subliminally or in some cases just right up front there, that tells members that their money is more important than their participation. Because if I say to you, pay your dues or we will suspend you.
Mm-hmm.
But I say to you, whether you attend or not, you're not going to face suspension. I think that sends a message that, okay, money must be what's important, because that's the thing that will get me suspended. And so I think that for decades now, at least since I've joined, there's been this message sent, not on purpose. I think it was sent out of a preponderance of or an abundance of kindness. People didn't want to take people away from their kids, their families, whatever it is. But there's been this message sent that dues are money is what will keep the lodge going. Your attendance is appreciated, but not necessary. When I first joined, and he was a great guy, but I think he was wrong about this. He's passed away, but Right Worship Brother Tom Seal, who was our secretary, told me the best way to get a lodge to notice you is to stop paying your dues. He said they'll call you right away. But he said if you don't attend for years, you just get lost in the ether. So that's why, before I get to my second reason, I'll let you respond to that. That's one of those reasons why I think it's not enough to tell people they need to commit. I think sometimes lodges need to enforce commitment and say, your attendance is equally as important as your dues, and we're going to treat them the same way.
Mm-hmm. That was really good points. And that's an interesting comment of the brother you mentioned. If you want to get noticed, stop paying your dues. The role of a brother isn't to be noticed. However, that's an interesting way to think about it, and it's very truthful, is if you stop paying your dues, that might be the only time you get contacted. I haven't thought about it that way. I think we're all after the same goal, is we want to be around brothers that want to be around each other. But I think having to force someone to do that, that's for the wrong reasons. However, if there's nothing wrong with having criteria in place or some type of guidelines, maybe updating bylaws for certain lodges here and there, if that's something they want to do. We want to be around brothers we know, like, and trust. And you can't know, like, and trust brothers unless you can be around them. And even though you might have gone through the degrees, it doesn't mean that you can know, like, and trust every brother that's in your lodge or that you go and travel and visit with. There's a lot of Masons I probably would never trust, unfortunately. And then there's people that are not Masons that I would absolutely trust that would probably make better Freemasons than some that are Masons. So yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's an interesting conversation. I think we just want our brothers to take it seriously and show up. And if there needs to be some guidelines to make that happen, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think it's worthy of continual discussion.
And the second reason I think we don't speak in, we don't say things like commit or demit, we don't speak in those terms, is this is a more complicated idea. So there's two types of endeavors, basically. There's skilled based endeavors, and then there's membership based endeavors. So being like a magazine subscription is a membership based endeavor, right? You subscribe to the magazine because you send the money and you get a magazine, but there's no indication that it's a particular skill or ability. You need to have sufficient money to get the magazine or go to church or whatever it might be. It's a membership based designation. And then skills based designation would be music, mixed martial arts, boxing, art, painting, dance, whatever it might be. It's something that when you say I am a musician, for example, people recognize it and understand, okay, he plays an instrument, he sings, he can, do whatever. He's shown a level of commitment that means he's skilled at being a musician, skilled at being an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Freemasons, whether purposely or not, since I've joined, we've treated being a Freemason as a membership-based endeavor. It's the type of thing where, you have a card in your pocket and that makes you a Freemason. And by definition, that's not the type of thing to which you have to commit. It's, if it's just a membership-based designation, then once you're in, you're in. It's like having a subscription. It's like being a member of a church, and there is a value to that type of idea. Once you're in forever. But it's not the type of thing you need to commit to in the same way you need to commit to being a musician, to being an artist, being whatever it might be. And one thing you hear a lot, and I've heard Masons say, is, we're all on the level, which means every Mason is equal to every other Mason. And that, again, if that's the attitude, then that's not really something to which you have to commit, because that would be like saying, I own a guitar, so I'm on the level with Jimi Hendrix. You know what I mean? Like it's a different attitude. So I think if we started treating Freemasonry as a skill, and there are differentiations, there are better and worse Freemason in terms of, can you set up a lodge? Can you tear down a lodge? Do you know your ritual? This is being a Freemason is first and foremost not a designation of membership in a lodge. It's a designation of skill. You are a skilled person at ritual work, at memory work, at making the world a better place. And I think if we treated it that way, we'd be more likely to encourage commitment.
Yeah, I think skill is very important. I think, but so let's look at it from another perspective. And I'm agreeing with most everything you're saying. Just trying to, I think the conversation is more interesting when we look at different sides of each perspective. We're not born with skills. I wasn't born knowing how to play baseball or knowing how to, build websites or make movies or whatever, right? I had to learn that skill. So it's similar. So let's put that into parallel with Freemasonry. Once you're initiated, passed, and raised, you don't just have skills, those skills have to be taught, practiced, learned. It takes time. I mean, Freemasonry is a journey. It's a life journey. And it's a commitment, not just to your lodge, but to yourself. And so, yeah, I think skills would be great if there was more use of those skills within our lodges by brothers, rather than just paying dues to keep our membership afloat. Why do you think that is? Why do brothers pay dues and not attend lodge in your mind?
I have no idea. I have tried to figure that out and I cannot for life of me understand it. My best guess is it's like a New Year's resolution, which never happens. I'm paying dues because I intend to return to lodge one day, which it rarely, if ever, seems to happen. It does, but it's rare. Um, I'll go next month. I'll go next month. I'll go next month type of thing, right? I'll go to the gym tomorrow. Um, so if I pay my dues, I can always theoretically come back later.
Mm-hmm.
But
What are the dues in your lodge?
I'm a member of two lodges,
Mm-hmm.
so 130 and $100.
Okay, so let's look at that for a second, and maybe that's part of the problem, is that dues are cheap, and they're too cheap. And maybe if we want more commitment, maybe the dues need to be substantially higher. And if you're paying more for something, you would hope to be getting more value for it, or you're going to make sure you get more value for something by attending or whatever it may be. And if you decide you don't want to do that, and then you're not going to pay those high dues because of the price that those dues are. Yeah, I think
I
that's
agree 100% with that. I think dues have been kept artificially low for many reasons. I mean, a lot of lodges keep their dues low. I'm not sure what it's like in Kentucky. Here, a lot of lodges kept their dues low by relying on outside income, which there's nothing wrong with. I think a Masonic temple should be a community home as well as a Masonic home. I think it's wonderful to have. We have a learning center at our temple. We have dances. We have graduations, weddings. We've done trick or treating at the temple. Norfolk has like a haunted Masonic temple. I think all that's wonderful, but it shouldn't be used to make up a deficit from dues.
No, 100%, 100%. I mean, $100 a year, that's $8 a month. $8 a month. That's embarrassing.
$10 a month for us, but yeah, I know what you're saying, because we do.
Okay.
We meet 10 months out of the year, but I know what you're saying. It is embarrassing. Yeah, I wish they were higher.
And it's not to be higher for the sake of gouging people. It's to be higher for the sake of being able to offer a better experience and be a part of brothers that are going to commit and be a part and attend regularly. I'd rather have a lodge dues be $1,000 a year and have 20 people show up regularly than, the exact opposite, than $100 a year and there's 200 members and only 10 show up. Yeah, or whatever. So it's if we want to improve Masonry, we need to take it more seriously. We need to be willing to charge correctly. It is a business. It's a business function. It's a business organization, and all businesses need to have revenue to support business activities. And to say it's not is not true, because we have business meetings that discusses minutes and pays bills. So if we have bills to pay, we should make sure that the income coming in from the organization covers those bills and then some.
Do you think, what are your thoughts on, I'm not sure if you have them in Kentucky, what are your thoughts on life memberships?
I think that there are life memberships. I'm a part of two of them. I think that's not a smart approach, because there's always going to be bills. I think a life membership is, if you can offer a life membership, you better have a trust fund to be able to substantiate it. I don't think that's a smart approach.
I agree. And that also creates the problem of, when you talk about raising dues, really you're only raising them for half your membership. For whatever number is that already has a life membership, they're not affected by that. So you end up, that can create a level of division in lodges, I think.
And for those lodges that have life memberships, you can still change them. You can update your bylaws. You can implement a bylaw change and say, we are modifying our bylaws. It's no longer life membership. Those that have life memberships, we can grandfather you in, or you can elect to opt out of your of that life term membership and join and pay annual dues. There's nothing that can't be changed or modified going forward.
I just had a brain blank, and then I switched on that. So before I go into that, the
I think we're afraid that if we raise dues, that people won't show up, and they're already not showing up. They're already not showing up. So we're not raising dues because we're afraid that we're going to lose membership.
That's where I was going with. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. I don't understand I've heard that argument and I don't get it. I don't see people, numbers are dropping anyways. I'm not really sure why the argument goes if you increase dues, they'll drop faster. I've seen no evidence. I've seen no evidence that lodges with higher dues have lower attendance. If anything, I've seen the opposite. Lodges with higher dues tend to have higher attendance.
And more committed attendance, more regular attendance. Yeah, exactly.
Now, I think I mentioned this earlier in the interview. Some Masons that I do respect have made the argument to me. They said, look, and I'm not sure if this tracks with the experience in Kentucky. I'd be curious about that as well. They've said, look, our social events are fairly well attended. Our barbecues, our dinners, or things like that, our fish fries, they're fairly well attended. Our degrees are attended okay, but they could be a lot better. It's the business meeting that we struggle with the most. Mm-hmm. And we've done, education, and we've done what we can to try to make them a more fulsome experience, but nothing seems to get through. And the argument has been, look, what Freemasonry has to offer that other organizations don't is the ritual and is the social aspect of it. The business meeting, you can get that at a Rotary Club, at a board, anywhere. So members are voting with their feet that what they care about most is the social aspect, and to a certain extent the degrees. And they're saying we don't care about the boring business meeting. So they've said, if we switch it to, again, just virtual master, secretary, treasurer does all the work and sends a report in, to the membership, and just ask membership to attend for degrees and for social events, you'll see those numbers will go up, and because they won't be burned out from business meeting type of thing, and then you can just leave the business in the hands of a few. I guess my question is twofold. In Kentucky, are you seeing the same thing where it's the business meetings that are struggling the most with attendance? And what are your thoughts on that solution?
So the way we do it is our business meetings have changed fairly recently, in the past six years or so, where minutes are not read at business meetings. So minutes from the previous state of communication are not read at the current state of communication. They are balloted on and voted on, not balloted. They are voted on by motion and approved or not, or changes. So all brothers who attend that communication have been provided electronically or posted on our bulletin board to review the minutes, and it is their responsibility to do so. So that's one of the ways that we have reduced the boring aspect of our meetings, and that is extremely a boring part of our meetings. And anybody that says it's not, I'm not sure why, but I'd be curious to listen. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important, but it's certainly boring. When we don't have ritual, we have education. Every single time. There's always something important going on. And you've used that word important a few times. So I think that I think it should be education first. I think it should be ritual second. I think social comes third. I don't think Freemasonry is not a social club. I mean, I can go out and hang out with friends socially at any time. I think Freemasonry can be a social club. There can be social aspects of Freemasonry, but that should not be the primary aspect of Freemasonry. Regarding fish fries and barbecues and things like that, I have nothing against any lodge or anybody that does these things either. I want to preface that importantly. I don't, in my mind, that's not the true value of Freemasonry. A fish fry, a barbecue isn't making the world a better place. How is that making the world a better place? So I think our priorities are mixed up, and a lot of Masons don't do enough reading and better understanding of the true organizational principles of Freemasonry to make ourselves better men, to grow and be mature as men. And I think, unfortunately, the society we live in condones the opposite, and it's a little bit scary, frankly. So I think that carries into our fraternity.
I agree mostly. I push back a little bit on, I think Freemasonry as a whole, like the whole pie, whether it's a Masonic barbecue or a Masonic business meeting or a Masonic degree or Grand Lodge or, this or the winding stairs or what, I think it all makes the world a better place. I agree with you though, it can't be one thing, and I think that's what concerns me about, like, I've heard Masons say they come to a fish fry, they come to a barbecue, and they say, this is what Freemasonry is about. It's about the fellowship here, and it's like it's about everything, right? That matters, but it doesn't matter more or less than the business meeting. It doesn't matter more or less than anything else, right? It's all equally important. I guess I'm curious if you're seeing this in Lexington and in Kentucky. Like, I agree with you, but it seems that the membership doesn't agree with you or with me in that when you look at how they're interacting with the crowd, they're more likely, at least in my experience, to go to a fish fry than to go to a meeting. So it seems like they are saying they've decided that, they view the social events as more important. Is that just a failure on the part of, you think, Masonic leadership to explain why degrees and why business meetings are important? Or is that just kind of the way of the world now?
That's a good question. Why do you guys have fish fries and barbecues? What's the purpose?
I mean, it varies lodge to lodge. Sometimes it's a fundraiser for a brother who needs assistance. Sometimes it's just to get together and, be with each other's company. Sometimes it's a chance for, especially new officers, to get to know each other because, you may have an installation, you got a whole new officer slate. It's nice for them to get together outside of lodge, get to know each other, because that makes things more smooth in lodge. And sometimes it's just for fun. Like there's multiple reasons why it may take place.
I think a lot of it is subjective too. I mean, your definition of fun and my definition of fun could be two different things. And I think it's okay with the lodge having their own culture and the way that they do things. But however, if brothers aren't attending business meetings, that's probably the most essential part of this, especially if the business meetings are providing education or ritual to make the world a better place. I don't think a fish fry makes the world a better place. I think it can create more bonds and friendships and a jovial atmosphere. But if we come back to the true nature of Freemasonry, which is to make ourselves better, to then hopefully be a ripple effect that makes the world better on some form or fashion, which is an infinite journey for all brothers in society in general, then let's take it seriously. Let's look at this. And again, I don't care if you have a fish fry. That's not my thing. It's not what our lodge does. What our lodge does is we have what we call, well, you've probably heard of them, I'm sure, festive boards or harmonies, right? And we get together and it's a special occasion and it's not frequently done. Now, some lodges do it after every meeting. We do it once, maybe twice a year.
So
And they're formal. They're formal. We have education. We have a keynote speaker typically, and it's at a location that costs money. It probably costs about $8,000 to put on a festive board, and we
sorry to
try to
interrupt.
take it.
Do
Yeah.
you find that those festive boards are better attended than your other meetings? Or do you find that the attendance is about equal between the both?
I would. They're better attended than our regular meetings, but they're also attended from brothers that are not just part of our lodge. We open up an invitation to brothers all over who want to come and enjoy our company together. There's just different ways to celebrate. And that's one of the ways that we celebrate. And that's how celebration was done, back in the 16, 17, 1800s, more so.
Moving forward, uh, so in terms of your presentation, I know, have you made this presentation outside of your district, outside of Kentucky, or are you planning to take this presentation to lodges, even virtually? Like, are you planning to take it outside of your jurisdiction?
Yeah, actually, this presentation is on our YouTube channel. So I'm the chairman of the Rubicon Masonic Society in Lexington. And that's a group, there's about 20 of us that get together a couple times a year, and we have a nice meal, and we have education, and talk about Freemasonry outside of the lodge, in usually a formal environment, in most cases, or semi-formal. And we look for ways to encourage education. So we have a channel on YouTube that has this presentation is on it, Commit or Demit, on our YouTube channel.
And Rubicon is a great example of taking Freemasonry seriously, and something I wish more brothers were doing, because there's so many opportunities available.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to thank you for speaking with me, but also for your efforts to take the craft seriously. I think you've said it, and you're absolutely right. Far too many of our members are not committing to the craft. But that is certainly not the case with yourself. That's certainly not the case with Rubicon Society. And so thank you for your commitment. Thank you for trying to encourage other members to be committed as well.
Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate that very much. And we have a lot of work to do, and myself included. So we're far from any form of perfection. Perfection is a pursuit; it's a journey. You always want to try to be better, but we sin every day, and we try to learn from those mistakes and those sins to move forward. But listen, I just want to make sure that anybody that watches or hears this, I think it's either going to do one of two things. It's either going to motivate a listener and excite them to step it up, or it's going to create defensiveness, and they're going to be upset by it. My hope is that it inspires a little bit more of energy and excitement to step up, to try to be better, to put the phone down and pick up a book, and maybe try to make your appearance look a little bit better, and take life seriously, take Freemasonry seriously. Freemasonry is a practice. You go out in the real world and you implement it. And it's a hard work. It's a lifelong journey. It's very hard. It's not for most men. It's not for most. And I think that we need to realize that not everybody can or should be a Mason. And if you're not, and if you realize that at some point, that you're not an asset to the fraternity, then demit or step it up. And if you can't attend, participate in other things. Just because you can't attend and won't attend are two different things. And again, I still think that if Freemasonry, if your lodge is providing value, then hopefully it's the value that brothers want to be a part of. And I want to say another thing also is I think technology is a big part of Freemasonry. It should be. Our technology in our fraternity and our craft is terrible. We just now figured out Zoom, but the whole world figured out Zoom and everything else. But our websites are terrible. Most of us don't know how to we can't take credit cards. We don't communicate well. A lot of brothers don't know email. I mean, just the basics of technology in general. I think technology can be an asset to help create more bonds and unity and good communication between lodges and brothers. Our lodge has a mobile app, so we can communicate. We'll share some pictures here and there of different things together within our lodge. So I think we need to step it up as well and utilize the positive aspects of technology to make our lodges better also.
Yeah, I think COVID helped with that. Ironically, there was a silver lining that,
Yep.
That whole poop show that was COVID, and I mean, still going on, I should say. It kind of forced us to start looking at virtual meetings, virtual education, communicating with brothers more in the virtual world. Um, Voting at Grand Lodge in Ontario, that was switched to virtual, which I mean, people don't realize, I think, how giant Ontario really is. I mean, it's bigger than Texas. So when you have Grand Lodge, it's very hard, if you live in Sonora, like a 10-hour drive to get to Grand Lodge if you're, so I think it did finally force us to do some things that we've been putting off in terms of integrating technology with our lodges and with our Masonic experience.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And with,
I appreciate you reaching out, and hopefully this was a beneficial conversation. And I welcome your questions. And I think we see a lot eye to eye in most of these aspects. And I think that's what Masons need to do. We need to talk about sometimes things that are a little bit uncomfortable, and we need to address problems versus hiding from them.
I agree 100%. And thank you so much for taking your time to be on the podcast. It's much, much appreciated.
Yeah, my pleasure.